The Tennessee Titans play the Seattle Seahawks this week, and for different reasons, both quarterbacks got to prove something in this one. We'll discuss. It's Crossover Thursday, the Locked On Podcast Network.
You are Locked On NFL Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome in. It is Crossover Thursday once again. Locked On Titans fans, Locked On Seahawks fans. We got a good one for you guys today. We're going to be breaking down the big storylines for both these teams coming into this matchup. We're going to be talking about the big matchups to watch in the game, what we think ultimately decides this one as well. Before we dive in, do want to let you know that today's Crossover Thursday is presented by Prize Picks. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. I know I already told you, but thank you for making Locked On Titans, Locked On Seahawks your first listen. Thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. I am the host of Locked On Titans, Tyler Rowland, here with the host of Locked On Seahawks, Corbin Smith. And as we jump into this one, Corbin, obviously these two teams are in different situations, but at the same time, they're both coming off of a loss. Sam Darnold throws 4 interceptions last week. They're unable to kind of get the ball into the end zone against the Rams, which the Titans know all about having trouble with the Los Angeles Rams defense. You know, maybe I'm speaking out of turn here, but it seems like Sam Darnold needs to bounce back and against a weaker opponent kind of prove that that was just a one-off situation and that offense can get rolling again. What are people saying in Seattle right now about that performance from Sam Darnold last week?
You know, it's interesting, Tyler. You would think with 4 interceptions that there'd be a lot of fans feeling like the sky is falling and
they do
Sam
that.
can't beat the Rams and all those things. And I think a lot of fans have actually, and you know, kind of been surprised about this. Have kind of had a practical viewpoint on what happened on Sunday.
That is surprising.
There were 4 really bad decisions that were made by Sam Darnold. But this was not a game where the Rams got a ton of pressure on him necessarily. It seemed like he was trying to do too much, that he was trying to big play hunt, and the Rams lured him in on a couple of disguised coverages that he clearly did not gauge correctly. I think they are all correctable. And look, there's the handful of fans. I've seen a few like, we need to play Drew Lock. And I'm like, okay, we were talking about MVP with Sam Darnold going into this game. I think that is probably reaching a little bit coming up with that. But Sam's been really good all year. The turnover issues have been growing as of late. So they've just got to figure out how to – you don't want to cut back the aggressiveness because that's what makes Sam so good when he's on. Yeah. But they also got to make sure that he is thinking clearly in terms of, you know, the coverages he's going up against. And I'm confident Clint Kubiak is going to be able to get his quarterback there. And he's been really good at bouncing back, whether it's from a couple bad plays in the game. I mean, he almost came back and won that game for him on Sunday with a couple nice drives. So I think that, you know, most fans have the right viewpoint here that, look, the world's not ending. You're 7-3. You had every chance to win this game in LA when you probably shouldn't have. This team is still in good shape. Sam Darnold's in good shape. And, you know, going against the Titans, you don't take anybody lightly in this league. But if there's a game where you can maybe bounce back a little bit, this is the week. Unfortunately, as you know, Tyler, that the Titans have had their issues on both sides of the ball throughout the season.
Yeah, I was literally about to say it. You know, the Titans are a great opportunity to get right for Sam Darnold. But it's funny that, you know, the season that the Seahawks are having that, you know, we're catching. It's not like we do crossovers a lot with you guys in the NFC, Titans in the AFC. Don't play super often, you know. So it's not like we talk all the time, but the Seahawks have had such a good season. We're catching it off a loss to a division opponent. Darnold throws 4 interceptions, kind of clouds the conversation. But what has Darnold in that passing offense done well this year to really take the league by storm?
Well, one thing is the big plays, and obviously, as I said, the big play hunting this last week, it was just bad decisions by Sam Darnold. But up to that point, he had been as good as anybody at making smart decisions and getting the ball downfield, particularly to Jackson Smith-Njigba, who is just having a ridiculous season and has a chance to break Calvin Johnson's receiving yards record. And he's on pace for quite a fewer receptions to do it. So you can look at the extra game, but he's doing this damage winning downfield and creating big plays They've gotten Rashid Shaheed more involved in the last couple weeks. Now that they've traded for him, they're hoping they're going to get Torrey Horton back this week too, which would be a big deal. But it's been the ability to throw downfield. Even after this game in LA, he's still averaging 9.3 yards per attempt this season. And he has been airing it out. He's been making things happen with the deep ball. And I'm not expecting the Seahawks to go away from that. That's what their offense has been largely built around success-wise. It's just going to be boiling down to Sam Darnold getting back to playing within himself and not trying to do too much. And their O-line has made it easier for him because it's improved. It's an improved unit. But they got to get back to him making smarter decisions and maybe some of the shorter passing game to get him back in a rhythm, which he was doing at the end of the game on Sunday against the Rams. Speaking of the opponent coming up this weekend, look, Titans with the record, obviously, it's been a real struggle, but
yes,
this has been a defense that has had a few games where they've been able to keep the offense in the game.
Yes.
And they just haven't been able to finish the vast majority of those. But what have you noticed from this defense in terms of what they're going to be bringing to the table here on Sunday, trying to slow down Sam Darnold and this offense?
Well, Denard Wilson, the Titans defensive coordinator, the Titans coaching staff isn't great, quite honestly, and, they're going to be replaced at the end of the season. But Denard Wilson is a good defensive coordinator in the NFL. He came from the Baltimore Ravens, came from the Philadelphia Eagles. He's a guy who has been really creative with his pressure packages. The Titans don't have a lot of good edge rushers, and quite frankly, they don't have a lot of edge rushers period now. They traded Draymond Jones. Femi Oladejo, their second-round pick, is on IR still. They don't have a lot of bodies there. They're playing practice squad guys that they're picking up off waivers and stuff like that. So they've been using defensive backs as edge rushers, like rookie safety Kevin Winston, and they're blitzing corners, and they're blitzing linebackers up the middle, and they're finding ways to, honestly, they're in the middle of the pack when it comes to sacks in the NFL, so they have been able to get some pressure. Jeffery Simmons missed a few games, but he's back. He is a dominant force up front. So when the Titans defensive line can actually get some pressure, they do some conservative things in the back end with their zone coverages and the way they kind of match things. They run a lot of cover 4 where, the backside safety is picking up the crosser and they're matching that coverage. And they do a good job of making it simple for their back end, which they kind of have to. We'll talk about the cornerback matchup in a second. But if the defensive line and the pressure packages the Titans are bringing on a particular day, if they can get home, then the Titans defense can hold up and do a pretty good job, and that's what happened there against the Texans. But the problem is, Corbin, the offense. And I talked about both quarterbacks having something to prove here. And Sam Darnold has just proven he can get back on track. The turnovers aren't going to continue to be news because they've had quite a bit of turnovers lately, so you need to nip that in the bud. But for the Titans, it's about Cam Ward proving that he can continue to grow. He hasn't had great numbers. You look into the stats, they're not great. You look into the analytics, it's all not great. Understandable. But I keep saying that he's, playing on hard mode. Like the coaching that he's getting, the wide receiver group that's probably going to trot out there this week against the Seahawks is going to be 2 or 3 practice squad guys because of all the injuries that they've had at the position. But Cam Ward had a really professional game last week and just really did the simple stuff well, and then also showcased the high-level arm talent. And I don't think anybody is going to expect a win in this game for the Titans, but you do want to see Cam Ward kind of prove that, like, hey, I am growing up. I am turning the corner in the back half of the season, doing the simple things and understanding my role. So I want to see Cam Ward kind of prove that, and I think that's honestly the biggest storyline for the Titans going forward. I don't know, from an outside perspective, I'm sure you think about a guy like Sam Darnold and what his struggles were early on in his career, and then you look at Cam Ward, and I think I use that as kind of an example to be patient here.
Yeah, not having Calvin Ridley now just makes it that much harder on him.
One play, and then he's out again for the whole season. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's unfortunate, and you always want to play teams at full strength too, but obviously the Titans are not going to be there in this game. And from Seattle's defensive perspective, like, you're looking to pick on the rookie quarterback. That's what you're looking to do. And they've had success against elite quarterbacks this year. I mean, Matthew Stafford, I know he had 2 touchdown passes Sunday, but he threw for 130 yards in that game. And after the first quarter, Seattle's defense basically shut them down. The only time they got in the end zone was after one of Darnold's interceptions where the Seahawks had short field. 2 of the 3 touchdowns were on short field situations off turnovers. So if they're not put in those bad spots, this defense has been absolutely elite. So they're going to be looking, especially with their front four, they're as good as anybody at getting after the quarterback without blitzing. They're going to look to have one of those welcome to the NFL games for Cam Ward with the talent they've got on defense and with Mike McDonald scheming. And I have a feeling they're going to be kind of ticked off coming into this game with the way last week ended too.
Yeah, the way that it kind of broke there for the Titans with the Seahawks coming off a loss like that, it's not great. But you're talking about the pass rush, and I think if you look at the pass rush for the Seahawks, it's not a lot of names that maybe most Titans fans would recognize. So I want to talk about that matchup against the Tennessee Titans offensive line as we continue today's Crossover Thursday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, but on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season, whether you're following the NFL, the NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least two player stats, and if you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. They have a new stacks feature, and it's a game changer, folks. You can now pick more on multiple stats from the same player in the same lineup, so I can take Steph Curry's more on points, threes, and assists. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot feature saves your lineup from a loss. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. It's Prize Picks. It's good to be right. All right, Corbin, let's continue today's Crossover Thursday edition of Locked On Titans, Locked On Seahawks, talking about this Week 12 matchup. It's going to be a tough one for the Titans because the Seahawks present so much of a challenge, but like Corbin was mentioning earlier, the Titans defense has had some moments where they've made things difficult, but I want to talk about that Seahawks defense because they've been absolutely fantastic this year. So much talent over there, but again, they don't have the dominant pass rusher that you would think of. I mean, I think Leonard Williams is a pretty big name, no doubt about that, but guys like Uchenna Nwosu, who Locked On Titans listeners should know about Nwosu. I wanted him badly in free agency when the Seahawks signed him. Byron Murphy, the second-year player out of Texas, DeMarcus Lawrence. They got other guys involved in there who were even less, like a Drake Thomas or a Trice Knight and things like that. Like, what is this pass rush doing without that dominant name to be able to put up such great numbers this year?
Yeah, and look, I'll push back a little bit without a dominant name. Leonard Williams has been absolutely fantastic the last couple of years.
I agree with you.
Defense. 11.5 sacks last year. He's on pace to get to double-digit sacks again this year. And teams are double-teaming him consistently, and he's still finding ways. Like, there is not – you can make an argument there might be two defensive linemen in the NFL in the interior that are more consistently disruptive than Leonard Williams is. And the other thing that makes him such a pain for opponents, he'll go outside and he'll stand up in a two-point stance and wreak havoc. Like, how many 300-pound guys can do that? He is an incredible player. Byron Murphy, the second's having a really good sophomore season with 5 sacks. Those two guys complement each other. And then off the edge, look, DeMarcus Lawrence, it's not often that a 4-time Pro Bowler gets signed by somebody and it just kind of goes under the radar. But because he was coming off an injury-shortened season and he was going on his 33rd birthday, I think a lot of people are like, well, this signing, well, that doesn't really make sense. He has been absolutely fantastic all year. The only game he didn't play in, they gave up 38 points to the Buccaneers. If DeMarcus Lawrence plays in that game, Seattle wins that contest. He has been that important to their run defense. He's generated pressure. The dude had 2 fumbles returned for touchdowns in the same game a couple weeks ago. He has been an absolute game changer there, and it's really made the rest of this line that much better because you have to worry about him. Nwosu's finally healthy after a couple injury-shortened years. He's having a great year. So they might not have the big names. Leonard Williams should be a big name. I'm still bitter about him not being an all-pro selection last year because he had a historic season for the Seahawks last year. Add in the 90-something yard interception return against Aaron Rodgers. I mean, he did things that just defensive tackles don't do. And he didn't even get an all-pro selection. I'm hoping he gets it this year because he's playing at that level again for the Seahawks. And that is going to create issues for Tennessee's offensive line because, look, they've generated problems for everybody. Like every offensive line they played's had to deal with that. But I want to flip the script a little bit here because Seattle's O-line has been one of the most improved, if not the most improved unit in the league. What we don't know is if Grey Zabel is going to be available in this game. And it's crazy we're talking about this because I thought his season was over. It looked like he had a nasty injury Sunday, but nothing significant. Now, does that mean that it's going to be something he can come back and play this quickly? We'll see. But with or without him, that interior offensive line, Jeffery Simmons is still one of those guys that really worries me going against this interior. Anthony Bradford's been very up and down at the right guard spot. They're playing a backup center in Timmy, a guy who started a lot of games, but he's not their starting center. Jalen Sundell's an injured reserve. So that is the matchup. Jeffery Simmons is a guy that can derail game plans. There are few defensive tackles in the league that do that, and he's the one that can. So, Tyler, that is the matchup for me that presents some scariness in terms of what the Seahawks can do offensively.
Yeah, you're talking about Leonard Williams and being like bitter that he's not getting enough credit, and that's how I feel about Jeffery Simmons a lot of the time, just a guy who's doing incredible things, and he also got a sack last week rushing off the edge. I mean, how many guys do that? We got two of them in this game who are the handful of few guys who actually dominate like that on the interior.
Unicorns.
Yes, correct. They're in the same class. So you're right. That is an area where I looked at, prepping for the game in our conversation here. Where are some things where maybe the Titans might be able to turn the tide and start the upset fire? You know what I mean? Like, I don't think it's going to happen, but any given Sunday, if there's a path to it, that's it. Because Bradford is one of the potential, again, you're right. It's a very good offensive line, very improved, but Bradford is one of the potential holes there. And if Grey Zabel isn't in the lineup, that's another backup next to the center. And the Titans really only position group, I would say, on the whole team that is actually like maybe other teams would steal it is the Titans' interior defensive line with T'Vondre Sweat and Jeffery Simmons. So I think if they can generate pressure on the interior, not only by those guys winning and making plays, but by using those guys as decoys and having them start on the inside, slant to the outside, blitz a linebacker up the middle. Last week, they looped a safety, Kevin Winston, around up the gut, and that's what allowed Jeffery Simmons to get on one-on-one on the outside and then get pressure. I think the Titans have to be creative to kind of expand the middle of the Seahawks offensive line and create some gaps there. Easier said than done, but that has to be what the plan is. And in the run game, I think Seattle has done a good job with some of the perimeter runs, getting Ken Walker to the perimeter and things like that. I think it would be the Titans have struggled in that area at times defending perimeter runs because of their edge issues and now their secondary issues, you know what I mean? So I think the Seahawks should definitely make sure they have reinforcements to prevent Jeffery Simmons in the middle from tearing things apart in the pass rush. But I think even in the run game, they're really going to put a focus on the perimeter runs and getting to the outside. I think that'll be a big matchup as well. The cornerbacks for the Titans, that's where I really wanted to go next because the wide receiver group from Seattle, like you said, if Torrey Horton comes back, that's good. And the Titans are playing their 4 through 6 cornerbacks coming into the season. Darrell Baker Jr., Marcus Harris, a rookie in the slot, Jalen Armour Davis, who they got off waivers on the other outside boundary spot. And I think that with Jackson Smith and Jigba having a historic season so far, the Seahawks wide receivers and being able to create those explosive plays and get openings down the field against the Titans' struggling cornerback group, that's one that I'm really worried about.
Yeah, you just mentioned two things that if I'm game planning, and obviously we're going to be talking some keys here in a few minutes, but game planning wise, like I'm looking at the Titans secondary. If I'm Jackson Smith and Jigba, I'm Rashid Shaheed, I'm Torrey Horton, I am licking my chops. And I'm like, hey, we just had to deal with, a Rams secondary that might not have a lot of big names, but they play really well together. They have their starters out there for the most part. Now we can go out here and we can feast on this group. And so I think that and the wide zone game, I'm glad you mentioned that too, because watching a couple of these Titans games and also because, look, I actually had been trying to prep for this game and I had watched a couple of games. I didn't even realize that Draymond Jones had been traded because a couple of other trades fell through before they moved him to the Ravens. Mm-hmm. Not having him out there now, they already were really thin at that position.
Yep.
Ken Walker's starting to figure things out. I think the wide zone run game and play action off of it, that has a chance to be absolutely lethal this weekend against this Titans defense.
No, I agree. And Cody Barton at middle linebacker for the Titans is slow-footed. He has struggled to move around all year. Cedric Gray, the Titans' second-year linebacker, is a great mover and really fast and been a great player this year, but he can get caught being over-aggressive, going downhill. And the Titans are playing rookie safety Kevin Winston in the back end and Amani Hooker at safety. And Winston's brand new, aggressive, downhill guy. I got a feeling they're going to pick on that and get behind him. And Amani Hooker has been real slow-footed at safety too, which means you get out of position, they're going to have a hard time recovering. So that is something to watch for over the middle of the field. But we need to talk about what's going to decide this matchup. What are the real keys to victory for either side? Get into that. It's Crossover Thursday, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Do want to let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of a game, you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who's going to score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout, even if you miss tip-off. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team is making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up. Remember, new customers get $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. All right, Corbin, let's cap off today's edition of Locked On Titans, Locked On Seahawks, Crossover Thursday. Thank you for making us your first listen, and thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports network. We talked about the storylines in this game. We talked about some of the matchups that we're looking for. Now we got to get into keys to victory. And honestly, Corbin, I'm gonna kick us off here from an upset standpoint for the lowly Titans here, trying to find a way to get a win at home, which they haven't done in over a year. It's all about turnovers. That's always going to be the biggest part of the equation. That's the meat of the sandwich when you're trying to pull a big upset here and the talent is this disparate on paper. I think if the Titans are able to turn over the Seahawks multiple times and not only end their drives, which lowers the offensive output of an explosive offense, but also could give the Titans struggling offense easier opportunities to put points on the board. I think turnovers is a place where the Titans can get an advantage. And at the end of the day, the Seahawks have had some turnover games where they've had massive turnover outcomes, and they've been able to win some of those. Like there's a 4 turnover game in there that they won. It's crazy. So even if the Titans win the turnover battle in a major way, it doesn't guarantee that they win, but it certainly is a logical first step for them trying to pull off an upset here is to win the turnover battle.
Yeah, and I think from Seattle's perspective, look, you don't take any teams in this league lightly. You can't do that or you're going to get whipped on Sunday. But just don't turn the ball over, Seattle. If you don't turn the ball over, you win by 25, 30 points in this game. That's the key. Play within yourself. And I'm going to actually lean in the run game here when we're talking about keys because for all the injuries that the Titans have on the back end, you can take advantage of that, but I think you need to get the run game going so that you have the play action off of it, which Sam Darnold has been so good. Other than last week, for whatever reason, he threw a couple picks on play action, but he's been really good on play action all year long. I mentioned earlier attacking the edges, not even necessarily in this game that you're wanting to run to the perimeter like boundary, off tackle. Yeah, this feels like a game where that wide zone, some of your wide split zone concepts that you like to run. And I could even see him sprinkling in some gap plays as well, attacking off tackle. I think if the Seahawks are able to do that, I like Ken Walker, Zach Charbonnet, and George Halani, who's starting to get more opportunities. I like those three all being able to run that outside zone against this Titans defense. So I'm going to go a specific number. I think they get to 125 rushing yards. And let's say 30 carries, 125 rushing yards. They don't need to light the world on fire necessarily, but if you can hit those two markers, I can guarantee you Sam Darnold is going to hit on a number of play action passes off of that too. That is the recipe for going into Nashville. And squashing the bug. And I would say that's the other thing. Like, don't give this team life. Come out and do what you did to the Saints, what you did to the Cardinals the last time. I'm not expecting 21 unanswered points 6 minutes into the game like they did against Arizona, although that'd be pretty nice. Come out and make it very clear early. We are the better team. We're upset this week, and we're not going to let you hang around. That is always the key in a game like this. Don't give Tennessee life with turnovers, things like that early. Squash the bug early and make it that your defense can really pin their ears back and make life really hard on Cam Ward.
Yeah, that's got to be the formula that the Seahawks want to stick to. I would say from the Titans' perspective, that start fast mantra, I think that's exactly what the Titans would hope to do. They would like to come out and kind of get their momentum going, give their defense a little bit of a break by having some drives that actually score, getting some points on the board, and not having to play from behind all the time like they have done. I think part of that is one thing that the Titans are going to have to keep in mind here as they go into this game. You're not going to shut out this Seattle offense. Like, they're simply too good. You're not going to be able to completely keep them down. So I think another big thing for the Titans has to be the red zone. Now, Seattle has a great red zone defense. They're 10th in the NFL, 62%. It's not like Seattle's offense has struggled in the red zone this year. So it's like, oh, there's a pinpoint. You might be able to get some. But last week against the Rams, and the Titans defense isn't the Rams defense, but last week against the Rams, they were 1 for 4 in the red zone. I think if you're the Titans, you realize you're not going to be able to stop this Seahawks offense. They're going to, from the 20s to the 20s, they're going to move the ball on you. There's not much you can do about that. But if you can bow your neck and hold up and maybe force 3 out of 4 opportunities to be field goals, now you at least have a chance to score 21, 22, 23, 24 points and actually win the game. Because that's probably not going to get it done if you don't do well in the red zone when you know that Seattle is going to move the ball.
Yeah, you really you're carbon copying everything for me on Seattle's side. You need to finish this game. Like the inability to get touchdowns. Like if they would have scored one more touchdown in the red zone, they win that game last week. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was actually the bigger issue than the interceptions were, which is strange. Right. But I think even Sam Darnold kind of agreed with that based on what he said after the game. The inability to get the ball into the end zone, you can't do that against this Titans defense. Go down, impose your will. And I think that's where that run game comes in, because they have been a very effective red zone running football team this year for the most part. Come out and set the tone up front. Get your running backs the football, even out of the backfield as pass catchers, which they had some success doing late last week. I expect that's going to be something they're trending a little more towards to loosen things up for their receivers as well. I think if they can check those things off, then the favorite can do what they're supposed to do and come in and set the tone. If they fail to do a few of those things, especially on the road, then you can give Tennessee life. And you and I both know, Tyler, it doesn't matter. Any given Sunday, if you let an underdog hang around in this league, you are putting yourself in position to get beat.
Yeah, and I know Titans fans are like, have you seen this team, though? There is no any given Sunday for this team, but you're right. You never know what could happen if you do a couple of things. Well, before we get out of here, Corbin, got you on the line, and since we don't talk often, Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator of the Seattle Seahawks, is a guy who Titans fans are interested in as a potential head coaching candidate. He has done a great job with this offense. Do you think that he is a guy who's ready to be a head coach? Do you think that he could be a good option for the Titans?
I think if you're looking for a head coach that is going to be able to come in and run a quality scheme and be an offensive play caller, that Kubiak can absolutely do it. My reservation is he just does not strike me as a head coach personality. He just doesn't. And we're talking about a guy that doesn't seem like he's very comfortable doing press conferences at all. He really doesn't like to be in the limelight like that. He strikes me as a guy that really enjoys the play calling aspect and working with his position groups. But it doesn't seem like he's that kind of personality that would necessarily be somebody that could galvanize a locker room. And maybe he is. Maybe behind closed doors, what we don't see, maybe he can do that. And maybe down the line, he becomes more of a personality to cater for that. But he's not his father had a lot more charisma than what he does. Like, that's just not – that is not Clint Kubiak's game. His is, I'm going to be putting all my X's and O's together here, and I'm going to get my guys ready for game planning stuff. So I think especially for Tennessee, since you kind of had a similar coach from some aspects, I would say Callahan had more charisma than what Clint Kubiak has. If you're just looking for scheme, then yes, I think it makes sense. But, it's different when Brian Schottenheimer was the Seahawks offensive coordinator, and I love what he's doing in Dallas, by the way. I know they don't have a winning record, but what he's doing there.
Oh, he's doing a good job.
Guys are playing really hard for him. Brian Schottenheimer has always had that head coach persona. He's always had it. I don't see it in Clint Kubiak, at least at this point.
And I think that's something he may grow into, like you say, like eventually that may happen. But for the Titans and where they're at right now, they desperately need someone with that kind of galvanizing personality and that leadership. And I think it's fair to say that maybe Kubiak doesn't check that box if he does check some other boxes that will make people very interested in him. But really appreciate that insight. That's something that we'll carry with us as the Titans look for a new head coach. But should be an entertaining game one way or another for somebody out there on Sunday. And we'll be here to get you ready for it again on tomorrow's show and then break everything down after the games on Locked On Titans and Locked On Seahawks. I'm Tyler Rowland for my colleague here from the Locked On Podcast Network doing great work on the Seattle Seahawks, Corbin Smith. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. It's Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.